We're now recording, so everything you say will be in the blogosphere sometime soon. So I'm going to suggest we go and have a little bit of discussion. Would you guys like to have a little bit of discussion about the quiz?
Yes.
Okay. What was doing? Okay. So here's some of the questions I put. We had a conversation about some of the Republican politicians and the idea that people are influencing with emotions. And so my question is, did you notice how they're influencing with storylines first that then create emotions? Anybody want to comment on these things?
I'll comment as usual.
Well, good.
So we went through this and we were kind of snickering last night because it seemed like there was very obvious examples that came up as we read through it.
Yeah.
So yes, very much seems like a storyline, and they pause for effect oftentimes to then let people kind of sit with the emotion that's brewing inside of them. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then it was pretty easy to get to the victim storyline example
Yeah, right.
pretty quickly.
These are not hard, yeah. But you could see this in play, couldn't you?
Well, we have a classic in South Africa, Charlie. Today is a holiday, public holiday, and there was like this huge march and protests organized for yesterday. So the government declared it then also a holiday, and everybody just stayed at home, trying to avoid the conflict, because conflict is Africa. Violence and so forth. So it really took everybody, the whole storyline of active protesting and what was said. Yeah.
Okay.
Trump style.
Okay. So
Can I make one more comment about this?
Yes, please.
Yeah, the hopeful storyline, what was interesting is well, contrasting it to the victim and blamer stories, like there were a number of people we could think of, like immediately came to mind.
Yeah.
The hopeful ones, there was like one that came to mind, like, and after that, like you had to think for a moment, and it made me a little bit sad, honestly. And it's like, I don't know if that's just because of where my mind has focused its attention, and maybe I should just be focusing on more of the hopeful storylines, or is that a reality?
Yeah, what do you guys think?
Both.
Yeah, both. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, how the politics uses these storylines. So everybody knows what color is most common in business and why. And in that environment, what color is going to be most likely rewarded?
Orange.
Same one.
Yeah. I think the key for me was thinking about successful businesses.
Yeah.
I've been in a fair number of unsuccessful businesses. I shouldn't say fair. I've been in a handful of unsuccessful businesses. And I think that's where the organizational color doesn't match the task or the company's stage.
Huh? Yeah, isn't this?
I can now.
Isn't it simple stuff?
I mean,
yeah,
it's starting to feel simple. It was a little overwhelming at the beginning, but as I'm able to do the homework. Thank you, Tanya. It's starting to click a little bit more.
So what do you think it's like for Greens to be in orange cultures? Any Greens here want to comment?
Yeah, like wearing a hair sweater.
Exactly. Yeah. When I asked people about this, that's what they reported. And either they found a way to transcend that and become senior managers, or they ended up with jobs that are off the main track. They had some kind of odd thing they did. So
I'll
how can
take it
green,
as a
how can,
compliment.
how can greens best influence orange cultures?
Facts and data.
Facts and data. Yeah, and Charlie, it's kind of funny, and I didn't reflect on this until just now, but a lot of the time that Tanya and I have spent conversing about problems at work, because I'm a blue that definitely works in an orange field.
Mm-hmm.
I think I spend a lot of my time helping her translate, because things that are stressful for her, I'm like, oh, that's just part of the thing. That's not something to be stressed about. Here's what I would be stressed about. And then,
Yeah, yeah,
So
good.
I've been able to act as a translator, not even really realizing that's
Nice,
essentially what I was doing.
nice.
What's interesting is in my role, and I'm a green, but I'm in a VP level role.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is it's been such an orange culture that has been, and so they've been like, we're really good about like keeping the trains running on track, but we have no idea where the trains should be going.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so they're like, you're really good about telling us the direction and why the trains need to go a certain way. So it's
Yeah.
worked out all right. They have recognized when they need either a green or a blue type person to come in and give direction, but it is work.
Any comments from anybody else about this?
Well, I can just say that I usually end up in trouble because somewhere along the line you have to make a stand because of certain behavior. And the challenge with the focus on appreciation, I get much further
Mm-hmm.
than earlier in my life, shall I say it that way.
So one of the early workshops I did was the Colorado State Mental Health Board. And it was about 25 people who were mental health providers. And some were actually patients and some were just people who did this work. And there are 3 attorneys. What color do you think the 25 people all were? All green.
Probably green.
And the 3 attorneys, orange.
Very orange.
And I
Orange.
said, what's your biggest problem I can help you with? And they said, we can't get the government to give us proper funding. And I said, so how do you approach them? And what they told me was, we go there with these heartfelt stories of how much heart we have in this and how valuable this is to the world and what a great gift this is. And I said, you don't get your problem, do you? And so I tried to help them. I don't think I made much progress. One workshop's not enough. But coincidentally, I was driving home that day from the workshop, which was in Denver, and I had the radio on, and there's an announcement that said the Congress finally appropriated the omnibus mental health bill, federal level bill. And it said that the announcement came because they finally had enough metrics to do it. So it's about numbers with the government. A friend of mine, I may have mentioned this, who was an orange, understood this and took a job as the head of Greenpeace and tried to help them. And of course, they fired him after 2 months because he didn't fit. So the culture stuff's interesting. So you understand that blue is the best culture for startups, and why? It's all about ideas. It's all about trade studies, and then has to change necessarily to orange. So you think you can do that without changing the people?
I kind of had a qualified answer to that.
Yeah.
I think the people at the top have to change,
Yeah.
or they have to morph themselves, like if they can become multi-dimensional. But I didn't think that the people at the bottom needed to as much, because they're probably a little more fluid in their response anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. I worked with this JWST team I mentioned that was going to build a telescope for $500 million that actually ended up costing $10 billion, and it was totally blue. And I mentioned this. I think I told the head of the organization that they're going to fire you, and I just want you to know it's not personal. It's just, as soon as the money gets big, they're not going to trust you to spend it. So they did, and they replaced him with a guy named Phil Sablehouse, who I didn't know, who was known as a project closer. What that tells me is he's orange, orange, orange. So I went and visited him and said hello and who I was, and very nice little meeting. And I said, how's it going? He said, well, I had to fire all of Bernie's people. By the way, they were all blues. And I said, you know why you did that? He said, no, I don't know why. I just didn't like working with them. So sure enough, he changed the whole team around. So, but I think you're right. And I think it's actually healthier to have a mix of people, probably a critical mass in the same color that the job requires. But I think it's this, all this is about is learning to understand and tolerate differences. That's the benefit here. And
Yeah,
go
Yeah,
ahead.
I personally, for me, the struggle is because I'm orange, but I also have a bit of yellow and a bit of blue, and I've been trained to be in the leadership role so that I'm empathetic and understanding and all of that. And then when I get overwritten by someone who is like hardcore orange, who
Yeah,
just
right.
goes like, no. And I always, like, my constant question is, okay, well, why do they train us to be nice just for all of us to be just overwritten by someone? And
Yeah.
then my concern with that is that how my people suffer,
Yeah.
right? So it's not how I feel, it's not about me, it's like, how does it impact the team? Because now it's like, no, this way, because
Yeah,
I said
yeah.
so.
Is the person that's saying that a man?
Yep.
Out of
Generally.
curiosity.
Yeah, generally.
I think that's a path that would be worthwhile pursuing with this group, because I know Tanya has certainly suffered from that, whereas I don't as much. Part of that's my color. I think part of that's my gender.
Oh, look, homophobia is raging in those places, but I don't know what to do about that. But I do know what to do about the colors.
Very quick comment coming from the background of science diplomacy. I was too naive going into that field, thinking that everybody who devote themselves to science diplomacy agreed. So far from it. So that's why I feel very strongly, building on what Nate and Tanya just said, that I feel, with all due respect to both genders or to any genders, however you identify yourself, but I feel we will all win if we will bring intelligent, talented women into the field of science diplomacy. I feel it comes naturally to us to some degree. I'm not excluding men or any other gender, but I feel that there is something into it, and I really feel that way. Yeah, so I really, again, I'm learning as I go through the field of science diplomacy, and it's all colors all over the place, and sometimes makes me wonder what's the right combination. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Hey,
Okay,
Charlie,
well,
I
yeah.
think you've hit a nerve with this one. If you don't mind, one more quick comment.
Sure.
The storyline thing is interesting to me, because I've had conversations with folks where the storyline is all there is. And if you don't understand their storyline and haven't been immersed in it, the conversation is very bizarre, because you start to ask the most simplest questions about the storyline, and they don't have an answer, or they jump to another storyline. And it almost seems like I've met folks that I'm not sure I could say what color they are in terms of your paradigm. It's almost like they'll be whatever color they're told to be by the person that's telling them the storyline. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, or if you've run into that kind of.
I mentioned I worked for this NASA administrator, Dan Golden, who was a bright guy, but a Trump-like personality. And early on, I wanted to understand him. So I had a friendship with the chief technologist at TRW, who was in Cleveland. He invited me out there and went to the orchestra and a nice dinner on their money. And we talked about Dan. He said, what you got to understand is there's nobody home. He's a chameleon. He just shapes up to whatever it is. And there are people like that. And they're so necessarily inauthentic that Dan is clearly blue, his color. But in terms of who he would change who he was every minute to match whatever was going on in a situation, very annoying features. So yeah, there are.
Interesting.
And by the way, he's really smart, so he could do this. You look, a stupid person can't do this.
Right.
So, but I think most people, after a while, you sort of get where they are. And I think naming these as storylines is a really powerful tool. Again, some of the feedback I got from workshops, and I'm talking about feedback from Caltech physicists. These are really bright people. They said maybe the most valuable thing we got was a vocabulary to talk about this stuff. We always knew it was there, but when we couldn't name it, we didn't know what to do with it. And naming these as storylines and understanding that they're true for the person, but not the truth, is a powerful thing, I think. Yeah, thank you, Matt. Anybody else want to talk about anything, or we'll move back to the, what I'm thinking is, was this having these little questions here good to stimulate conversation? This work for everybody?
Yep.
And so I'm thinking about 15 minutes of free time to go over the last session and have you guys talk about it and then get back to the materials. That feel like a good balance to you?
Sounds great to me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you all. Back to the charts. So where we were just finishing up the culture piece. I believe that's where we were. Does this look, let me get back to, does this look familiar? Whoops. Yeah. So very simply, there's two business cultures, normally blue and orange. Anything that you do, communication of any sort, you want to match the color. You're meeting people where they are. It's essential in proposal writing. Attend to the shape of your culture, match the lead to the task. And I think to sustain four-dimensionality, and the biggest risk is that orange overrides everything. And the metaphor is the data dog. Okay. Good. Okay. So continuing along, I call this team mindset. And this is interesting. Probably one of Jet Propulsion Lab's most respected project manager, John Cassani, is a friend of mine. One day he said to me, I wanted to explain why some project managers are fired when cost goes from 400 to 410 million, and others get medals for projects that go from 400 to 750 million. So he had a study looking into this, and I looked at it and said, I'm going to apply the 4D system to this notion and see if we can get even clearer, because it's about the colors again. So basically, there are two mindsets. The blue mindset is performance, and that comes from everything's got to be the best it can be. The other mindset is the cost mindset, and the stakeholders want to minimize cost. Stakeholders, I'm using this kind of funny word to denote everybody involved, but usually the really important ones are the people paying, but also the people doing the work. It's all got to be coherent. And if the stakeholders are incoherent, that's when you get fired. So I didn't show this in workshops in China because they got bogged down. They didn't understand basic project management. But basically all project management is balancing performance, cost, and schedule within some acceptable envelope of risk. And the two mindsets are incompatible. The procedures, the rules, it's in the book, or I can send you copies of the book, I think, but Wiley wouldn't care, or this chapter anyway. You can read some of the differences, or schedule rules. So they operate very differently. The procedures are very different. Basically they're incompatible. So in the blue performance mindset, performance is in the driver's seat. Cost and schedule are in the trailer, so to speak, and risk is minimized. So pretty much our house was managed like this. Performance was in the driver's seat. Schedule was important. But I made very few decisions based on cost for this house, and that worked out pretty well. The orange mindset, cost is in the driver's seat. Schedule is also in a vice because schedule increases increase cost and performance is in the trailer. So here's how I use this. When I had project teams, usually I would have a flight project. That was my early work. And I would give everybody, I put up a chart and I put the stakeholders across the top. Like often I would have the government people in the room, the contractor people in the room. There might be a sponsoring person from the headquarters. There might be a subcontractor. I put these on a chart, and then I give everybody a 3x5 card. And I would say, I want you to characterize where the stakeholders are, performance or cost. And they would do this. And they do this secretly on the 3x5 cards, and we'd collect them and either take a break or the second chair would go back behind the screen and put this on a chart and put it up. And nothing created as much drama as this chart. I had people with fist fights over this. I had people laying on the floor pretending they were crucified, people screaming. And what I explained to them was that if you don't have this coherency, you've got to fix it. If you are all not on the same paradigm, you're heading for disaster. And I had a very big, when I say big, I'm talking about a $10 billion project. That's a big project team that I did this with. And the headquarters office was in the blue and the contractors were in the orange. And I said, okay, either you change the project, the headquarters office out to orange, or you're going to probably be canceled within 18 months. And they were. It's exactly what happened. So I'm always fund the predictive power of this. And again, I don't show this in most workshops or public workshops because if you're not a project team, this is not important, but the lesson is the same one. So what we've done is we've taken this coordinate system that came out of when I was at CU in the summertime between my first two years, and looked at this Jungian work on how we build innate personalities, then applied this same tool to groups of people, which was the culture work, and the same tool to projects. And very revealing thing. So you got to attend to the mindset. And this is the AMBR project process, attention, mindset. We must manage it. Negotiate or remedy mismatches. Or so to define what's in your future, you're going to be fired or get a reward. Card check on this little piece. This makes sense? Good, thank you. Everybody okay? Good, okay. So how to get what you want. This is about amber process. This is not the amber I'm talking about. This is a different kind of amber that you get mostly in the Black Sea. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is then not an act, but a habit. So it's about managing your attention, what you spend your attention on. As I've said before, think of it like money. You want to be careful how you use it. Your mindset, which is the combination of your storylines and emotions. And check your emotions as a diagnostic tool. If you're not feeling good, you're probably in a drama mindset. Surface the storyline. Look at the behavior it supports. You want to turn the storyline green, and the easiest way to do that is to move into the state of responsibility with empathy and accountability. That'll get you a positive result and reinforce the loop. So again, where attention goes, power flows. It's a very limited resource. Attention budget, just like a financial budget. You must not spend frivolously. You must ignore less important matters. So it never worked for me to make lists of priorities, of things to do. What worked for me was to decide what was not important and just don't pay attention to it. And so that helped me focus my full attention on what did matter. And one thing that creates memories is significant emotional experiences. And I'm going to show you things in the workshop once in a while that might actually annoy you, but I want to give you an SCE, a significant emotional experience, to help remember this. So where attention goes, power flows. They found that when they put an image of a bumblebee in a urinal, the targeting became much more precise. Men couldn't resist peeing on the bumblebee, cleaning the floor of the bathroom. Where attention goes, power flows. And in China, I found a more advanced version, a soccer version of this. Your mindsets are your springboards for action. It's about your emotions. It's an interesting book, How Emotions Are Made. Core systems in the whole brain give meaning to body sensations based on past experience. This reinforces the idea of somatic psychology that emotions are body sensations. And your self-taught, the things you say to yourself, and your expressed thoughts. And these are operating in very different parts of the brain. Habituate effectual behaviors. So how do we do this in the workshop? We have you writing in your workbooks, thinking. You're going to be sharing this more and more as we go in this huddle, which is going to be all of you. The context shifting worksheet, which we've been working through, you're going to practice application. And I'm going to encourage you to use the online tools, or something's got to repeat this, or you're going to lose it, and take action. So people always ask me, especially in China, they want the magic pill to change behaviors. And the bad news is you got to practice. Sports teams practice, musicians practice. In physics, if you didn't have to do the problems, physics is easy. You got to practice that. And this book by Malcolm Gladwell says to master anything takes 10,000 hours of practice. It's an interesting read. I don't know it's exactly right. So this is I'm trying to get women into this thing and authority figures whenever I can to reduce the this issue of male dominance in our society. So this is a neuroscientist. The primary driver of change in your brain is your behavior. The same story. There is no neuroplasticity drug. Nothing is more effective than practice in helping you learn. You must do the work. And the more difficult, the greater the learning. We used to have an expression when I was studying physics that you never learn anything from a problem you can do. Well, let me back up. I think for whatever reason, I've unmasked that video. Sorry about that. Let me unmask this. And I want to make sure I've got the sound on. Okay.
So by studying the brain after stroke, we've learned a lot, and I think these lessons are very valuable in other areas. So the first lesson is that the primary driver of change in your brain is your behavior. So there's no neuroplasticity drug you can take. Nothing is more effective than practice at helping you learn, and the bottom line is you have to do the work. And in fact, my research has shown that increased difficulty, increased struggle, if you will, during practice actually leads to both more learning and greater structural change in the brain.
Interesting. So the idea is to get benefits from this work as you practice we're going to start next with the behaviors. As you practice the behaviors, do the work. I want you to notice direct experience in your life of change. And also, as we can measure with online tools, and I have a way to do that, not the best way, but a way to do it, you'll see numerical change. So the point is that AMBR, with this work, attention, mindset, behavior, results, will give you actual definitive changes. So on your feet, move around. You know the drill. The deep knee bends, move the blood. Clean the toxins out of your body. Every 30 minutes. Good for your health. Okay. So this is the part we've all been waiting for at some level, the place where I can drag this thing. Where we start working through the actual behaviors. And people ask me why 8? Well, I thought it's important to cover all 4 dimensions. They're all important. And being a project manager that likes redundancy, I like having 2 in each. The first one is appreciation. Performing organizations enjoy what they're doing. For a long time, I ran a storyline, and it was reinforced by the boss I had at the time, that if people are happy, they're not under enough stress. And I got that from my grandfather, figured out that's nonsense. And appreciation makes the workplace enjoyable. People perform at higher levels when they're having fun. There's no doubt about that. Shared interest. This is a really interesting piece of work. This is much more potent than it appears on the surface. The inquiry is so simple. What do they want that I can want for them also? I know of nothing that is more effective in reducing conflict than this question. So now we're going to work through the green dimension and start with appreciation. If you only did one thing as a result of our time together that would be life-changing, it would be make appreciation a habit. Appreciation is a wonderful thing. It makes what is excellent in others belong to us as well. So people often ask me, how did you get onto these things? How did this come to your attention? I attended a seminar by people that were Jungian in background, back in Washington, by these 2 guys who wrote this book. What they argued was that men go through archetypes, the king, warrior, magician, and lover archetypes, which is very Jungian thinking. I noticed later that they line up pretty well with the 4 colors too, which is something after the fact. And so during the workshop, I realized I was in the king archetype. I had $1 billion a year of budget I was managing, running this big program. And what they taught in the workshop was that the only legitimate function of the king was to bless the subjects. So I tried an experiment. When I went back into work Monday, I imagined I had this king scepter in my hand. People came in, I imagined I was going to be blessing the subjects. So when someone showed me something, as you might imagine, I've got a really good gift of critical thinking, and I can criticize anything. So instead, what I changed my mindset, and I began blessing the subjects and pointing out what was good about what they were doing. Well, there was this immediate sea state change in the place. The whole workforce became energized. Glad group was everywhere. And so I've never stopped doing this. But that's how it came. Before you criticize others, walk a mile in their shoes, because first, you'll be a mile away, too far away for them to hit you. And second, you'll have their shoes. So people often, again, the Chinese are very curious, ask me, how do you pick a behavior? So here's the checklist. Does it address a dimension? Yep, it's mainstream in the cultivating dimension. Address a natural human need? Yep, very, very deep need. Can you see it when people do it? Yep. Can you measure it? Yep, we measure against a standard I'll show you later. Can you learn it with AMBR? Yep, we're going to do experiential exercises, and you can also do this with emails. Is it personally rewarding? Feels great, giving and receiving. So one of the stories I like to tell about this is that my wife and I frequently go to Costco, which is in Superior, and we come back to Boulder, and we have to drive back through the city to get back home. And the speed limit coming on a highway, 65-mile-an-hour speed limit. Speed limit goes very rapidly on 30 miles an hour. So we go into Costco and my energy starts draining. I start trying to figure ways to get out of there. Junko's energy starts boosting. She tries to figure out ways to stay as long as possible and see everything in the place, which probably takes hours. So this particular day, we're in there about an hour, and by the time we got ready to leave, I'm exhausted. So I get in the car, and I'm not paying a lot of attention. I come into Boulder, 65 miles an hour, and blew through the 30-mile zone, and I got the red sirens behind me, the lights. So I pull off the road into a parking lot, and the policeman comes up, asks for my driver's license and registration. And I said, I just want to really appreciate you. And he says, huh? I said, yeah. I said, I was zoned out. I wasn't paying attention. Here's what I know, that people who get a citation have a 50% less chance of having an accident in the next 18 months. So thank you for that. That's really something special. So he looks at me like, am I crazy? He comes back and hands me the ticket. And still looking at me, I said, again, I just want to appreciate you. You do a great job. Keep up the good work, and thank you. So I go home, and the ticket has a thing to send in the payment. So I fold it up, put a check in there. About a week later, I get a letter back and says, I'm sorry, we have no record of this citation. So I'll tell this story in a Chinese workshop, and my translator happened to be in the US 4 or 5 months later, and everyone's talking about this, and they're in Florida, and she gets us pulled over for speeding. And her boss is in the front seat, and he starts using the same methodology that I used. And the policeman says, that's a bunch of crap, I'm not buying it. So then she speaks up, and she spoke the same thing except authentically. And he said, oh yeah, I said, you should listen to this young lady more, let her drive from now on, and there'll be no ticket. So when it comes across as authentic, and we're going to talk about how you do that, it works, and inauthentic is going to hurt you. Business results, yes, and I'll tell you a story about my first client, the accounting firm, how it changed them and set off the career of my client to end up being a Federal Reserve Board chairman. And to repeat it, yes, you can repeat it by yourself, but the online tools are very helpful. So that's the list. That's the checklist for anything that makes it into this category. So expressing authentic appreciation creates a social context of mutual respect and open communications. And again, there's a feedback loop here. So the more you appreciate, the more you will change the social context field and make it easier for everybody else to appreciate. So this is how you make change in the world. What you do is you become who you want to be, what you want to see in the world, just like Gandhi. And the main thing people will do when they feel appreciated is they'll surface unfortunate realities. And we're going to talk about how important that is to deal with unfortunate reality. I've said this before, but I believe if we had appreciated authentically the technical accomplishments of the Hubble contractor, somebody would have said to me, Charlie, I'm worried about that mirror. And then I would have done the testing that we needed and avoided this disaster. But everybody clear on this idea of what we're talking about here? Good?
Yep.
Marissa too? Okay. So this is our standard format. Happy with what you have. Your emotion, your storyline, I'm accountable for sustaining appreciative social context, support the behavior to habituate authentic appreciation. This is attention, mindset, behavior. So we're going to look at some things to help you bring your attention, to motivate you for this. So the question is, how do you make it authentic? And the answer is that you make it authentic by living in the mindset of gratitude. If you live in gratitude, you will experience it as authentic. Does this make sense to everybody? And then when you speak it, it will automatically be authentic. Practice it, do it. There are not just mental results, there are health results. and business results from this. And again, remind you to focus on you changing you. I am human and need to feel love just like everybody else. It's universal. So if you're not sure about this, think of a relationship where you did not feel valued. You likely left physically and or emotionally. That's what led me to divorce, this exact thing. It is foundational. It is a deep human need to feel valued and loved, an emotional need. So people say to me, is it everybody, the Chinese need it? Do Germans need it? I said, it's not just them. It's animals too. Don't dogs need love? Animals need love. Oh, hang on, I've got a, for whatever reason, I think I've got a video suppressed. No, I guess that's later. Okay. Okay, I'm good. So this is arguably the richest man in the world, Warren Buffett. When you get to my age, you'll measure success in life by how many of the people you want to love you actually do love you. I know people have a lot of money, but the truth is nobody loves them. That is the ultimate test of how you lived your life. The trouble with love is you can't buy it. The more you give love, the more you get. Here's the feedback loop idea again. And you know the song, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. So data from Gallup survey, 70% report receiving no praise or recognition in the workplace. 64% of those leave their jobs says they didn't feel appreciated. My son had his dream job and he's going to leave it. And I said, it's perfect for you. Why are you doing this? I didn't feel appreciated. We all need it. This is a worldwide Gallup survey. 70% hate going to work or mentally checked out, roaming the halls, spreading discontent. This is some data I read by some Colorado consultants many years ago. He said in a typical business, about 20% of the workers are giving all they can. There's no way you can get more from them. The other 20% don't want to give more. There's nothing you can do to get anything more from them. But the 60% in the middle say they would give more to their work if there were more in it for them. What is the more they want? They want to feel appreciated. So people say to me, Charlie, I'm already busy. Will this take more time? And I say, I don't know the answer to that, but here's what I do know. If you make it a habit, you won't experience it as taking more time. It'll be automatic. Surveys, supervisors believe money motivates. But our deepest needs are emotional. That's back to the Maslow chart again, to feel appreciated and to feel included. And here's the difficulty with money. The first thing is we tend to judge it relative to others. So I was doing a workshop in China with a translator I was very fond of, Ellen, who I'm still friends with. And we're talking at the break. She said, Charlie, they don't pay you enough for this. And I said, no, they pay me what I wanted. I'm fine. And I said, they don't pay you enough. Trust me. I said, okay. So a little bit more. I said, Ellen, on next break, we're talking again. I said, you think they don't pay me enough? She said, I guarantee they don't pay you enough. So it's in my mind processing. Next break comes along. Ellen, how much are they paying you? And she told me, and I'm mad. Okay, so they're paying Ellen more than me. So I'm sort of steaming about this all day. So end of the day comes, I go talk to my client and said, I need to tell you, I'm feeling angry with you. This is a real thing to learn, to sort of express your emotions matter-of-factly. He said, what's this about? And I said, you don't pay me enough. He said, I pay you what you asked. And I said, I just learned you're paying Ellen more. He laughed and said, she's getting paid in renminbi. You're getting paid in dollars. There's a factor of 6 difference. And interesting, it makes us hunger for more. I think money is a form of dopamine addiction. Why do billionaires want more money? So I asked myself, what would I do if someone gave me somebody at the front door? Let me, excuse me a second.
Nat, while Charlie is gone, that email of yours about entropy and the laziness in human behavior, that was very interesting, and it made me think of Edward de Bono also confirming that the thing.
Yeah, of like peer talking.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
What's kind of nice too is I because of this data.
Yeah, it's one of my foundational books. The 7 Habits, or not 7 Habits, the Road Less Traveled.
I can go in and break that down just the same way of.
You guys want to chat some more? How's the material?
It's great. I'm loving it.
Okay, good.
Mhm.
Charlie, the material is great. I read recently on this topic, an article that talks about the money doesn't buy happiness. And they have actually, I don't know if you read it, but it actually tells you that, let's say around roughly $100,000, right? Give or take. That's what one needs to feel secure. And beyond that, it actually doesn't help, and at some point starts deteriorate.
Once you meet your basic needs, more money is not even, the number I have is 80,000, but maybe with inflation it's 100 now. So
well, because I'm talking Canadian dollars, so that's about the same. That's about the same.
Yeah.
Actually, Nat and I were just kind of going back and forth, and it's interesting what you say about maybe a dopamine addiction, because I worked under venture capitalists who've been successful. They've had a couple of successful exits. They have hundreds of millions of dollars. Why are they getting into yet another venture? And it's because they're trying to get to the billionaire status out of the 100 millionaire status. And they make our lives a living hell. I mean, it's literally like you're expected to work morning, noon, and night. And you're like, why? Why is this? And it's like, I think we're going to have to start having interventions with the 1% when we start to see this evidence of this, like, I need more, when you already have 400,000 or $400 million.
I think it's dopamine addiction. I really do.
Yeah.
So I tell people, if someone gave me $1 billion, what would I do? And I said, well, I'd buy me a Gulfstream 450. After that, I don't have anything else I could possibly want. So, and maybe not even that these days. I just give it away. So people say, let me know when you have it. I'm ready.
It explains a lot.
This is a quote from Timothy that's often misquoted. It's often quoted, money is the root of all evil. That's not the quote. The quote is, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I'll tell you, when I look around the US at what's going on politically, to me, it's almost all just greed. Not to mention destroying the planet for money. Anyway. And here's what's interesting. Money, believe it or not, financial rewards can actually reduce cognition. And I think the way this works is the more you're thinking about money, the less you're thinking about the work to be done. Yeah, I'll make sure I got I'll try and do better getting myself prepared next week. So this is Dan Pink. Once a job requires thinking, extrinsic motivators are often harmful. In contrast, intrinsic motivators work. And let's go back to the needs hierarchy: feeling valued, feeling included, reality and commitment, and living in a state of responsibility.
Princeton University in the US. This shows the power of incentives. Here's what he did. He gathered his participants and he said, I'm going to time you how quickly you can solve this problem. To one group, he said, I'm going to time you to establish norms, averages for how long it typically takes someone to solve this sort of problem. To the second group, he offered rewards. He said, if you're in the top 25% of the fastest times, you get $5. If you're the fastest of everyone we're testing here today, you get $20. Okay, now this is several years ago, adjusted for inflation. It's a decent sum of money for a few minutes of work. Okay, it's a nice motivator. Question, how much faster did this group solve the problem? Answer, it took them on average 3.5 minutes longer. 3.5 minutes longer. Now this makes no sense, right? I mean, I'm an American. I believe in free markets. That's not how it's supposed to work, right? If you want people to perform better, you reward them, right? Bonuses, commissions, their own reality show, incentivize them. That's how business works. But that's not happening here. You've got an incentive designed to sharpen thinking and accelerate creativity, and it does just the opposite. It dulls thinking and blocks creativity. And what's interesting about this experiment is that it's not an aberration. This has been replicated over and over and over again for nearly 40 years. These contingent motivators. If you do this, then you get that. Work in some circumstances, but for a lot of tasks, they actually either don't work or often they do harm. This is one of the most robust findings in social science and also one of the most ignored. I've spent the last couple of years looking at the science of human motivation, particularly the dynamics of extrinsic motivators and intrinsic motivators. And I'm telling you, it's not even close. If you look at the science, there is a mismatch between what science knows and what business does. And what's alarming here is that our business operating system, think of the set of assumptions and protocols beneath our businesses, how we motivate people, how we apply our human resources. It's built entirely around these extrinsic motivators, around carrots and sticks. That's actually fine for many kinds of 20th century tasks. But for 21st century tasks, that mechanistic reward and punishment approach doesn't work, often doesn't work, and often does harm.
So I'm going to let us spend the last 4 or 5 minutes with you guys talking about whatever you want to talk about. Whatever in that.
Yeah, I would like to start, Charlie.
Yeah.
I know, I just want to say, you said you will be better prepared, but there was nothing bothering me. And this is not about appreciating.
Thank you.
Maybe the others can just say, but I think really you can relax. It was like flowing for me. Let's hear what they have to say.
Thank you. Okay.
I would agree. I think having your time, Charlie, has been a blessing, and we appreciate that.
So what do you think about the material? What struck your attention?
It's interesting for me. I'll just try to be quick. It's usually a couple hours later that things like start to register. It's like, oh, that situation, this other situation. The conversations before actually helped that process kind of prime the pump. So I like that. And yeah, it's the more interaction we get, the better the result has been for me.
Yeah, and a couple thoughts from me regarding being authentic. Just thinking about the most recognized, the most talented diplomats in the field that I'm in science diplomacy, they basically be 1000% authentic. So people from across the world, regardless of culture, regardless of beliefs, regardless of language barrier, they feel it. They can see through you. So if you're just trying to be authentic, and maybe you're doing a great job, but if people can sense that it's not really who you are and what you believe in, don't stick your nose into diplomacy, because honestly, people can see through you. So, and don't want to occupy the floor too long, but the really talented, intelligent, outstanding diplomats can really stop the war. Just being really completely authentic and very deeply to the core, being respected to differences and things of that nature. So that's it from me. Thank you, Charlie. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be in this group and learning from you. Always
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciated.
I like the expression comfortable in their own skin.
I just have a quick comment about appreciation, Charlie. I think that's a really undervalued, and I really like the way you presented it. It always has shocked me how little it's used and how easy it is to use by leaders.
Yeah.
And you know, I've always had this experience where people flock to get on my teams when I start something new, and people are always surprised why. And I said, well, first of all, I appreciate their efforts, and I make sure they feel like they're the reason we're successful, because they are. And I think the other thing is, and you touched on this too, it's a big part of how you feel about yourself too. And you know, I do yoga and meditation, and that's a big piece of it, is that, you know, appreciating everything in the world and everything that's come to you, and not focusing on the negatives, but on the positives. And it literally makes you physically and mentally, and you mentioned this in your slides, it makes you feel better. I think it's grossly underappreciated, unfortunately. Ironically, maybe.
A feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, Charlie, for me, it is really a privilege to hear these things from you. But and it's also for me, it's those examples that you use, how these things actually worked in such huge, important projects, right? To me, that's really huge benefit. Thank you.
Okay. We've got 1 minute to go. Who wants the last word? Sorry about my phone. I get about 2 phone calls a week. I'll see you next week, and be prepared to appreciate each other. I'll send out a homework assignment later today or tomorrow.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good week.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.